Hello, this is Mrs. Boots, and we're going to work the practice problems for composite functions. Remember to look for the symbol. So we have plus sign for addition, minus sign for subtraction. That's old school. For multiplication, there may be no symbol or the dot. For division, it may be a slash or division symbol. And then if we're plugging something in, we're going to have parentheses. So for the first 5 problems, we're given f of x and g of x. All we have to do is plug them in with the correct operation. So f of x is x minus 5. G of x is x squared minus 5x. What are we doing in the first problem? We're going to add. So we're adding those two together. That's super easy because all we have to do is combine like terms. Remember to always start with the highest exponent. So at x squared, there's only one of them, but I notice there's 2 terms that have a plain x. Minus 5x plus 1x is minus 4x, and then we have our constant, minus 5. Easy enough. Number 2, again, plug in your 2 equations, f of x and g of x. Now I could have put parentheses around those in number 1. In number 2, I'm definitely putting parentheses because I have a subtraction symbol. And I know with the subtraction symbol I'm going to have to do what? I'm going to have to distribute. So what do we get when we distribute? Well, the first binomial in parentheses doesn't change. But the second one, the signs are going to change. Minus x squared plus 5x. Now we're going to combine like terms. We only have one x squared term, so we write it down. But we have 2 x terms, so that's going to be plus 6x minus 5. Notice the differences between the addition and the subtraction aren't that great because there's not too many terms. Number 3. G comes first. So I have x squared minus 5x. What's the operation? Minus. So make sure you put that second function in parentheses. X minus 5. Now we know what we're going to do, right? We got to distribute that negative sign. So I have x squared minus 5x minus x plus 5. Now we have like terms to combine. So I end up with x squared minus 6x plus 5. Number 4. What's the operation? Well, there's no sign there, so we must be multiplying. What comes first? F. So I'm going to write f down. X minus 5. Then I write down my g function. X squared minus 5x. Now we need to multiply. So I'm going to distribute the x first. I get x cubed minus 5x squared. Now I'm going to distribute the negative 5. That would give me negative 5x squared plus 25x. Now it's time to combine like terms. I only have one x cubed, so I'm writing it down. Notice I've got 2 x squareds. No, they don't cancel. Negative 5 and negative 5 gives us negative 10. Then we add the 25x because there's no like terms to combine with it. Number 5. What's the operation? In this case, we're going to do division. Okay, so what's on top? F of x is on top. Let's write that down. X minus 5. G of x is in the denominator. X squared minus 5x. Now remember what we do? That's right, we have to factor. Well, the top can't be factored. It's going to stay the way it is. But the denominator can be. We can pull out a GCF of x. We're left with x minus 5. Does anything cancel? Yes, it does. The x minus 5's cancel. What's going to be left on top? A 1. Anytime everything cancels, you're always left with a 1. So I have 1 divided by x. This would be the division of these 2 functions. Number 6. Notice we have 2 different functions. f of x is a quadratic and g of x is also a quadratic. So let's go through our operations. In number 6, we're going to add. So which one comes first? F of x. So I have x squared plus 7x plus 12. G of x is being added to that, which is x squared minus 3x minus 28. Because they're being added, yes, we can write them one under another if we really want to. So x squared plus x squared gives us 2x squared. 7x minus 3x gives me plus 4x. And positive 12 minus 28, that gives me a negative 16. This would be the answer for number 6. Let's look at number 7. Notice g comes first and we're subtracting f. So I have to do g first, x squared minus 3x minus 28. Now we're going to subtract the f of x function. Well, f of x is x squared plus 7x plus 12. Okay, so what do? We're going to have to distribute that negative sign. The first function stays the same. X squared minus 3x minus 28. Now we distribute negative x squared minus 7x minus 12. Okay, combine like terms. X squareds, well, they cancel out. Okay, negative 3x and negative 7x. Well, that's easy. That's just going to be negative 10x. Then we have positive 28 and negative 28 and negative 12. That's going to give us a negative 40. So I have negative 10x minus 40. Number 8. What's the operation? We're multiplying. Okay, this is going to get a little tricky. I have a quadratic trinomial times a quadratic trinomial. Let's write that out. X squared plus 7x plus 12 times x squared minus 3x minus 28. Okay, so start with the x squared. Distribute it to everything. So I have x to the 4th minus 3x cubed minus 28x squared. Now let's distribute the 7x to everything. So I would have 7x cubed minus 21x squared minus 196x. That's a big number. Okay, last one. Got to distribute the 12. So I have 12x squared minus 36x minus 336. Now notice I like to stack mine in columns so that I can just add down the column, each one. Okay, so the x to the 4th, there's only one term. X cubed, I have 7 minus 3, so it's going to be plus 4x cubed. X squareds, negative 28, negative 21, and positive 12 gives me negative 37x squared. Then I have negative 196 and negative 36. That gives me negative 232x. And then last but not least, minus 336. If you can handle this problem, you can do anything. You're awesome. Number 9. What's our operation? Okay, we're doing division. Alright, so what's on top? The f function is on top. So I have x squared plus 7x plus 12 in the numerator. The denominator will have the g function, x squared minus 3x minus 28. But how do we solve this? Oh, that's easy. We have to factor, right? So what's going to multiply to give me 12 and add to give me 7? That's 3 times 4. And because that 7 is positive, both of them are positive. Now let's look at the denominator. What multiplies to give us 28 and subtracts to give us 3? Well, 28 would be 4 times 7, right? The 7 is going to be what sign? Negative. Because that 3 is negative, and the 4 has the opposite sign, which is positive. So what cancels? Well, the x plus 4's cancel. That means we are left with x plus 3 divided by x minus 7. Now let's look at number 10. Well, this one's also division. What are we dividing? Well, they put g on top and f on the bottom. So we could cheat a little bit and take our answer from number 9 and flip it. It's going to be x minus 7 divided by x plus 3. If you don't believe me, flip this entire fraction, factor it, cancel, and write what's left. Number 11. Now we have some simple evaluation problems. All we have to do is plug it in. Okay, so I'm plugging in a negative 7 for x. That's easy. So it would be negative 2 times my negative 7 plus 1. Okay, what's negative 2 times negative 7? 14. So 14 plus 1. What's that? Okay, 15. So the f of negative 7 equals 15. Number 12. What are we plugging in number 12? We're plugging in a positive 1. So I take my function 3. Well, this is an exponent. Well, it doesn't matter. We still can plug in the positive 1. So now let's simplify. That's 3 to what power? 3 times 1 is 3. 3 minus 2 is 1. 3 to the first power. Well, the first power is just that number. So the answer would be 3. Number 13. What am I plugging in? Negative 4. Okay, so I have negative 4 cubed minus 5 times negative 4. Well, what's negative 4 cubed? That's going to be negative 64. Negative 5 times negative 4 is positive 20. Negative 64 plus 20 is negative 24. So the f of negative 4 equals negative 24. Number 14. I have a quadratic equation. What am I plugging in? Wow, a plus 3. That's going to be tricky. Not really. Let's write it out. I have something squared minus 6 times the something. Now let's plug it in. A plus 3 and a plus 3. So in the first term, I know I'm going to have to write it twice and distribute. Double distribute. The second term's super easy. Just distribute the negative 6. Okay, so let's do it and simplify. I have a squared plus 3a plus 3a plus 9. Now distribute. I have negative 6a minus 18. Okay, time to combine some like terms. Well, there's only one a squared. That's super easy. How many a's do we have? 3a plus 3a minus 6a. Well, that's going to cancel. So those are gone. Now I have a plus 9 and a minus 18. Well, 9 minus 18 is negative 9. So this would be my function, my new function. Let's look at 15. What are we plugging in? We're plugging in 3a. Not that challenging. You do the same thing. Everywhere there's an x, put parentheses. Now, plug in your value, 3a. Remember, anything outside the parentheses, all you have to do is distribute. So, 7 times 3 is 21. So I get 21a plus 2. It's kind of anticlimactic considering the last problem. Alright, let's look at number 16. What kind of function do we have here? We have a cubic. What are we plugging in? 4b. Not a big deal. I have parentheses cubed plus 1. What goes inside the parentheses? 4b. So I have the cube, the 4, and the b. Not a big deal. 4 cubed is what? 64. So I have 64b cubed plus 1. That is the f of 4b. Number 17. Now we're doing true composites. We're plugging one function into the other. So what function is on the outside? The f. So I'm going to write my f function and leave parentheses for the x. So the x is going to be left out. Now inside the parentheses, we have to plug in the g function, x minus 1. Why? Because g's on the inside. Now we can actually simplify. Remember, anytime we have a binomial to a power, we write it out that many times and multiply. So I would have x squared minus x plus 1, and then please remember, bring down that minus 1 at the end. Now we combine like terms. X squared. Okay, I have 2 minus x's, so I would have minus 2x. And looky there, plus 1 minus 1 cancels. So the f of the g of x is just going to be x squared minus 2x. Let's look at number 18. We're taking our g function and plugging in f. G's on the outside, so I write down my g function. Put parentheses for the x's. Now plug in the f function because it's on the inside. X squared minus 1. Okay, so now it's time to simplify. Only in this case, we don't have any multiplication to perform. We're just going to write it out without the parentheses and combine some like terms. So what do we have alike? 2 constants. So I have x squared minus 2. So the g of the f of x is x squared minus 2. Number 19. This one's an evaluation. How do we know it's an evaluation? I have a number on the inside. Remember, we work from inside going out. So I have to start with my g function first. What was g? That's right, it's x minus 1. So I put parentheses for my x. Let's write that that's the g function. That way we don't confuse ourselves. So the g of 5 equals parentheses with a minus 1. The 5 goes inside the parentheses. Now we simplify. What is that? 4. I know, it's kind of anticlimactic. Now the f function. So the f of the 4, got to plug it in, equals, well, what was my f function? X squared minus 1. So plug in that 4 where there was an x. So now I have 4 squared, which is 16 minus 1. That's just 15. So the f of 4 equals 15. Actually, we should write that different. We should write this out as the f of the g of 5 equals to 15. That's our final answer. Number 20. What are we plugging in? We're plugging in a 3 into the f function. That's what's in the middle. Okay, so f of 3. What was the f? Oh yeah, something squared minus 1. Let's plug in our something. 3. So 3 squared minus 1, that's 9 minus 1, which is 8. So now let's take our g function, g of the 8, and we're going to plug in, that would be a parenthesis minus 1, plug in the 8. 8 minus 1 is what? 7. So the the g of the f of 3 equals 7. Make sure you remember which letter goes on the outside versus the inside. Now let's look at number 21. Okay, what's on the inside? Negative 2. Where's the negative 2 being plugged in? Into g. Okay, so let's write our g function. G of negative 2 equals what? Well, g is parentheses minus 1, right? So we plug in the negative 2. Negative 2 minus 1 is negative 3. Alright, so now that I've got to plug that into f. F of negative 3. Well, f is something squared minus 1. So I have the negative 3 squared minus 1. What's negative 3 squared? That's right, it's 9. So 9 minus 1. That's going to be 8. So the f of the g of negative 2 equals 8. Number 22. I have the f of x function and I'm plugging in g. So start with the f function. Something squared plus 3. What am I plugging in? G. That's the square root of x plus 7. Well, this is cool. The square and the square root cancel, just leaving x plus 7. And then I have the plus 3. So that simplifies to x plus 10. Now let's look at number 23. I'm plugging in what? I'm plugging f into g. So let's write down g. Square root, parentheses, plus 7. Plug in f, x squared plus 3. Now simplify. I have two like terms I can combine inside that radical. So I get the square root of x squared plus 10. Can I take the square root of x squared? Yes, but not while it's attached to that plus 10. Number 24. What am I plugging in? I'm plugging in 1. Into where? Plug it into g, and then take that answer and plug it into f. Okay, so first start with g. What is the g of 1? What was my g function? Oh yeah, that's the square root. Okay, so I have the square root of something plus 7. Alright, so I'm plugging in 1. Well, 1 plus 7 is 8, so I have the square root of 8. Now, it's not very pretty, but that's okay. So I do the f of the square root of 8. What does that equal? Well, what's my f function? Something squared plus 3. And we have to plug in the square root of 8. So the square and square root cancel. That's beautiful. That just gives me 8 plus 3. That is equal to 11. So the f of the g of 1 equals 11. Let's look at 25. What am I plugging in first? Negative 3. Where? I plug it into f. Then I take that whole thing and plug it into g. So, start with the f function. F of negative 3. Well, the f function is something squared plus 3. I'm plugging in negative 3. So negative 3 squared is positive 9. 9 plus 3 is 12. So I need to plug in a 12 into my g function. So the g of 12. G is what? Oh yeah, square root of something plus 17. What are we plugging in? 12. Okay, 12 plus 17 is what? 19. So, I have the square root of 19. Not a perfect square, but that's okay. The g of the f of negative 3 is the square root of 19. Now let's look at 26. What are we plugging in? We are plugging in 13. Okay, so the 13 is being plugged into what? Into g, and then we're going to take everything from g and plug it into f. So I have the g of 13. What is the g function? That's the square root of something plus 7. So I'm plugging in a 13. 13 plus 7 is what? 20. So this is the square root of 20. We don't have to simplify it. Just leave it the way it is because we're going to plug it into the f function. So I'm plugging in my square root 20 into f. Well, f was something squared plus 3. So I plug in that square root 20. Notice the square and the square root cancel. Yay! So I have 20 plus 3. Well, that's easy. That's just 23. So the f of the g of 13 is going to equal 23. This concludes all the practice problems for composites.